So the Elden Ring Nightreign test has come and gone, and me personally, I'll definitely be wanting to jump back in when this bad boy comes out in March. But with a goofy testing schedule, there was a lot to digest, and not a lot of time to do so. Especially with playing on the PS5 and losing a full test right out the gate. I figured there'd be problems with the connection, as that was the point of the test, but a full session loss hurts. Why? But that's not why you guys are here. It's time to break down Elden Ring Nightreign and talk about some of the unexpected core concepts that break off from Elden Ring and FromSoft games altogether. But it might just bring in some new players who typically shy away from Souls-likes to begin with. And an unlikely comparison to another fantastic game, Ghost of Tsushima. So make sure to stick around to hear more on that. So what is Elden Ring Nightreign? Well, since I'm a late poster here, you probably already know about it. But if you don't, the most simplest way to put this is that it's a roguelike boss rush game that is mostly intended to be played cooperatively in a group of 3. But you can also play solo if you like. Now most of the game is a copy and paste of Elden Ring, from enemies, landscapes, bosses, attack animations, and even iconic weapons. But one of the most non-Elden Ring parts of this game is the lack of character customization. And not just aesthetically, but starting with classes as well. While Elden Ring lets you pick a starting class, that's more of a placeholder to start your journey. You slowly turn your character into whatever style you want, whether it's a tanky heavy armor class, agile and light, or multiple forms of magic use. In Elden Ring Nightreign, there are preset classes with predetermined unchangeable stats, called Nightfarers. And there is 4 known ones revealed and playable within the network test, and 4 more to be released on launch day. And I'll dive more into the classes and what makes the system so unique here in just a little bit. As I mentioned earlier, the whole premise of the game is essentially a boss run. You have 3 days to work through to reach the Nightfall and ending on a random boss that offers a wide range of difficulty, as well as bosses from various Souls titles, which was one of my favorite parts of the game. Now if you've heard anything about Elden Ring Nightreign, you might have heard some of the Battle Royale comparisons going around. But there are only truly 3 elements that would give that impression. You get dropped into a massive map via a spectral bird, and then there's a ring of night that closes in, bringing the deadly rainfall, and you rummage through chests and boxes for weapons and items to use. Now let's go over all these mechanics real quick. The first being a drop-in. You fly in on a spectral bird and get dropped off at a random location in this massive world of Limvale, an alternative universe incredibly similar to Limgrave. When you get dropped into Limvale, you don't get to direct yourself where to drop. It's randomized drop locations, where you and your 2 compadres land. From there, it's up to you where you want to go. All you need to know is that you're on day 1, and by the time the ring closes in on you, you'll be taking on a boss at night to cleanse the rain and start the next day. Now if you get caught outside of the ring, you'll start taking damage over time, but it's nothing too wild. If you needed to grab an item you missed, or go to a crucial point like a flask upgrade, you can manage to squirm around for a while and drink some health flasks before getting back to safety. Now one of the most notable changes between Nightreign and Elden Ring is no more torrent. While you can no longer summon your magnificent steed, we are now boosted by a super sprint and a more agile landscape traversal, like a wall jump and no fall damage.
Not bad!
This helps you scoot around the large map without mounting up. And you can even move fast like this while in combat, which I found to be fun and a nice change up for combat and strategy. So while the Ring of Night closes in, here's where the main objective comes into play. Leveling up and finding gear to get prepped for that first boss battle and beyond. Now the third element I mentioned is opening chests and such to find gear and items. It's just the start. You can find classic usable items to throw or boost your stats like fire pots and weapon grease. But beyond those chests, where the real gear lies is on the bosses scattered throughout the map. Now supposedly bosses are random, but I found most would be in the same spot from run to run. I don't know if they're saving more randomness for the full release, but I really hope it's not predictable, because that would get pretty stale. Just running the same route over and over again. But I digress. One of the best parts about Elden Ring Nightreign is the RNG for weapons. I probably ran close to 30 runs, and not once were my weapon combos the same. When you defeat a named boss, they have a chance to drop higher end weapons, as well as passive abilities from increasing stamina to absolutely wild traits like lightning strikes when you execute a successful dodge. So overpowered, by the way. If you see this one, you're gonna want to pick it up. But you only get to pick one of the 3 upgrades that get offered per defeated boss, so choose wisely. And when it comes to the weapons, there are a ton of iconic weapons as possible drops, and with them come massive varieties of special unique abilities, but more importantly, traits. And you can stack these traits, so even if you're maining one weapon, you'll want to carefully pick what other weapons you have in your other slots, such as heals on kills, increased skill damage, increased crit damage, increased spell cast time, and even game-changing passives like periodic glint blade summons. But they only work when they're in your main slots, so your right and left hand. So you can juggle traits in your offhand as needed, and the list of possible weapon passives is crazy, and the build potential feels endless. And this right here is my #1 reason why I'm definitely picking this game up on release, and what made it so addicting. Going in every run and not knowing what weapons I might come across and creating wild builds on the fly was super fun. But therein lies the dilemma for current Elden Ring players and potential newcomers. While this may be appealing to new players who want to experience endgame combat of Elden Ring without the grind, may find the amount of information and potential skills to play with to be very overwhelming. and those current Elden Ring players who love progression and building and tweaking your own builds may not like the lack of control and randomness of it all. The most control you have is where the roguelike elements really come into play: relics. Relics are permanent equipment that can be swapped and managed before every run. At the end of each run, depending on your progress, you can be rewarded with different relics. These relics, depending on the rarity, can give you up to 3 passive traits per relic. And each night fair has 3 relic slots to fill, and they're color-coded, so you can only place certain relics in the corresponding slots. I think they're doing this to avoid overpowered combinations, but I did see some issues with the system. There are a lot of traits that can be in these relics, from starting gear traits, traits that boost stats, give you status weapon damage, and even give you class-specific traits, which is where I saw some issues. Some classes can only equip certain colored relics, but I collected multiple relics with class effects on colored relics that I could not equip, which felt useless. So I don't know if the color system needs tweaked, or there's more to this system that just hasn't been released yet. But it was a bummer to see, because some class-specific traits I really wanted to take advantage of, but I couldn't use because that class didn't have that slot for that specific color. Now let's jump back to these classes. And if you guys already know about the night fairs, click down on the timestamp to jump through to the next section. So as I said before, there will be 8 classes in the full release, but we get to play 4 during the test. Each are unique aesthetically as well as their functionality. All classes have starting gear, 1 unique passive trait, and 2 active abilities, one being a faster cooldown skill and the other being an ultimate skill. Let's start with the Wilder, which is a nice balanced class able to take a decent beating and still dish out a ton of damage. Their passive is Sixth Sense, which allows for a one-time prevention of death for the entire run. And their short cooldown skill is a claw shot that can either pull you around for maximum mobility or pull enemies towards you and throw them off balance. And the ultimate ability is an explosive arm spike that does a ton of damage. The Guardian, which is like a tank class, starting with a tower shield and heavy armor, can take a lot of damage and has a passive to enhance their blocking, as well as using this badass Birdman's wings to do an AoE gust and a dive bomb ultimate ability that absolutely wrecks and looks badass too. The Duchess is a quick moving heavy damage dealing class, but it's pretty squishy. Their passive allows you to double dodge, really getting clear when necessary, and their short cooldown skill allows for them to recreate an event, or more specifically an attack of an enemy that happened in the past. A move that takes some skill and quick thinking to land successfully. And for their ultimate, a sneaky ability that turns you and the entire team invisible for strategic takedowns or to pop some consumes and take a second to regroup during an intense battle. And finally we have the Recluse, which is a magic dealing class that pumps damage. And with its passive ability, you can refresh FP while fighting, with their short cooldown allowing you to collect residue from enemies of different affinities to unleash a magic cocktail back in their face, as well as an ultimate using blood magic that definitely is the most hard-hitting ability out of all the night fairs so far. And these classes' traits are all preset. You'll find Sights of Grace throughout Limvale, and you'll want to level up as often as possible because you feel a massive boost in power with just 1 level. But there are no stats to allocate, it's all just a click of a button. The good news is you really feel the increase in power. The bad news is for die-hard RPG fans is the lack of control with your stats. Maybe you're a stamina guy or you want a massive health bar. Well, that's more so determined by which class you decide to go with now. And if you're playing with a group and not solo, you can choose the same class and it doesn't lock you out if someone picked your favorite class, which is nice. And picking the right class for your group can actually make a huge difference in assisting your team. For example, the Guardian is a true tank. It can even get relics that cause enemies to focus on you while blocking, like a legitimate taunt ability. Alright, so hopefully you guys get a good picture of how this game functions and how it differs from Elden Ring. But why play something that sounds like total repetition? Well, I've got a few thoughts and notes on this, and this is where my Ghost of Tsushima comparison comes into play. For one, why do we play Souls games to begin with? I'd like to think most of us like to keep coming back for the intense challenge and wicked boss battles. And for those who are curious, you better believe I beat that last boss, Gladius, and it was amazing every second.
There it is. Magnum. Holy moly.
Yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for!
But definitely not easy to get there, which made me want to keep going. Hoping you have a competent team and the right builds to get the job done is wild, man. All that for one shot is super high stakes, and I f***ing loved it. And for those of you who know Souls games, you could have many attempts on a boss before you beat it, while just getting to the final boss is a challenge in itself. More often than not, I didn't make it all the way to day 3, so it felt super intense walking through those gates when I did. And when the full release comes out, there'll be 8 Night Lords to take on in day 3. So if you want to get them all, it's actually going to be a lot of playtime. Each run to get to day 3 took around 20 to 30 minutes, so there's a bit of a commitment each session, especially if you're playing online. But beyond just having fun with builds and taking on new bosses and tough iconic ones, what's the point? It seems to be that the only things rewarded right now are the major relics when defeating the Night Lord. However, there is a vendor in the round table hold that has yet to appear, and a currency called Merc that couldn't be used in the playtest. I've read potentially that you might be able to use Merc to swap colors of your relic slots, which would answer my question about the class-specific traits I mentioned earlier, as well as character skins and gestures. And while all those are well and good, I wouldn't mind seeing a few unlockable different starting weapons. Nothing overpowered, but enough to feel a bit of a boost to start. Would feel like a good progression. And then the other would be special armor unlocks for achievements. So downing a tough Night Lord, or doing it solo, or killing no bosses on the first day, things like that, the achievement opportunity could be endless. But it would be a great way to flex your status and skill. Showing off an armor only available after a tough achievement would be dope. And it actually has been done before in Ghost of Tsushima's online mode Legends. This whole thing reminds me of what Ghost of Tsushima did. Started with an epic single player game and campaign, and then dropped their online mode Legends, which doesn't play the same as Nightreign, but has the same concept of online co-op and doing dungeon runs with each other. And within Legends, you could unlock some badass gear from completing some tough achievements. And besides the fun combat, that was one of the main reasons that kept me playing. A great sense of progression in the form of permanent unlocks, and a game like Elden Ring Nightreign would fit perfectly in my opinion. And they could take another page out of Ghost of Tsushima's Legends book and add difficulty modifiers to runs as well. And with all that said, let me know what you guys think about this spin-off of Elden Ring. And for my fellow diehard Souls fans out there, are you guys going to be jumping into this? And what do you think about newcomers popping in? I know I'll be jumping in on this on release date. I can't wait to see all the unreleased content yet to come. So as always, happy gaming, and I'll see you guys in the next one.